Welcome to Growth Layer, an interview series that pulls back the curtain on what it takes to build in health and family. And today I'm joined by Isabel Greiner, the founder and CEO of Intuisse, a premium skincare company redefining beauty through the lens of longevity science. And after building global brands at Estée Lauder and Malone, Isabel launched Intuisse with a bold vision to bring NAD+, a molecule at the center of cellular health and repair, into skincare. Isabel, welcome, and I'm excited to dive in.
Hi, Destinee. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
So before we started recording, we started to get into some juicy nuggets. And I think there's a lot that we can unpack and a lot that we can dive into here, especially with the growth and expansion of the longevity market, the longevity consumer market, awareness around NAD that has also seemingly has increased significantly in the last few years, even from when you and I first met. I thought maybe it would be interesting to hear and start with your background, stepping into the identity and role of as a founder. And also just seeing that, you've had a non-linear path, just like so many founders, and you bring this interesting range of experience. So I thought maybe we can start there.
Oh, I love that actually. Yeah. So my first step in my career was at Estée Lauder, and it started at skincare. And then I went sort of into color cosmetics and fragrance. I kind of done it all, but I actually had the opportunity to work on some really small brands, or at that time they were very, very small, right post acquisition. So including being on the first marketing team at MAC, post acquisition at Estée Lauder, as well as at Malone. And so I really fell in love with entrepreneurship, even though it was not obviously entrepreneurship within a big corporate. So I had really this tension between those two. And I really saw founders, saw their vision, saw their passion. But it was an easier road, of course, because I met them further along post-acquisition, further along the road where they'd already done some of the tough stuff. But yet really understanding and learning about how do you create brand value, brand differentiation. And I always think that Estée Lauder was the best of all possible schools for that. I also fell in love with skincare at the time because I had been pre-med undergrad, had a huge interest in science, and so have always had a soft spot for science and for skincare specifically. And then later in my life, as I came into my 40s, I started being very much aware of functional medicine, etc., through just family issues around different spacing now, different immunosuppressant diseases, etc. And I just really became interested in functional medicine. And so this whole longevity science angle was a very happy marriage for me between my love of science and skincare, as well as entrepreneurship.
That makes so much sense because I was thinking about you and, what it must have felt like to step into the founder identity. So tell us a little bit more about the origin and the birthing of Intuisse. And then also, did you have to face any shifts within yourself to take this on and become a first-time founder, to become the CEO of a very innovative company?
I think that every founder that I've met is avowedly a jack of all trades. So I've always been the kind of person who's gonna, even though I had a very corporate career up to this point, but I always have been the kind of person who's gonna pitch in and do I'll stuff envelopes, or I'll, do the C-suite presentation. And so I think you need to have that kind of willingness to be a jack of all trades, do all the different roles, know that you're actually learning in all those different roles, and also a little bit of hyper confidence that you can be, the COO and the CFO, even if you've never been the COO or the CFO. So you need a little bit of excess hubris, I think.
Love that. And I 100% agree, because how can you create something new if you've never done it, and yet you still have to have the faith and the conviction that you can create something brand new, right? And to be able to see it through.
I also think that taking a step back as any career professional and kind of taking a step back and being like, okay, I'm going to learn this now, is something that we, progress in our careers probably don't do because we're like, oh, done that, been there, know that. But actually, it's been a really interesting um, perspective for me in order to how do you create a company from the ground up and be very mindful of like what's fluff and what is absolutely necessary. And I'm only going to do the absolutely necessary because I can't learn everything and go too deep into each function. And it actually creates efficiency.
I could not agree more. I have a list blocked out on my calendar. Like these are the core priorities, and that's what I'm working through every week. Because to your point, now there's learning, there's engagement, there's taking action. It's like how do you balance all of that? And then you have your life, right? You've got your family life. I'm a mom, and so I couldn't agree more. So now that I'm hearing your story about your entrepreneurial slant, even from the very beginning, it totally makes sense that you stepped into, co-founding, being the CEO of Intuisse. So tell us a little bit more about how that came about.
Well, it is, I have to say, lucky happenstance, which is not like it's not a perfect answer, but I was introduced to the two other scientists on our project early on. Giovanni Camici is a molecular biologist at the University of Zurich. He's actually a molecular cardiologist. So he's been studying aging at the molecular level, at the cellular level for 20 years. And why? Because aging and heart disease are correlated. Obviously, as you get older, there's more incidence. So very unusual because it's not, it wasn't a dermatologist I was introduced to, it was a cardiologist, molecular cardiologist. And they sort of were like playing with this idea of NAD plus role in different metabolic processes, etc. And I met them literally through a friend of a friend. And they said, can we do anything with this? What do you think? And should we do IV? But it's a medical product then, and you have a lot of regulatory issues. And so we really thought about how do we bring this to the masses, so to speak, even though it's a luxury skincare line that we've developed, and really allow people to access intracellular NAD plus in a way that is affordable versus even an IV, because IVs are super expensive. Everyone's sort of jumping on that bandwagon, but it's invasive, it's expensive, and it's actually not intracellular, it's extracellular.
I've actually never thought about that before. I personally have not tried infusions. I am very much interested in the red light therapy, and that's what in the ice baths and the saunas, but I actually haven't tried infusions. And now that you framed it that way, I think intuitively it makes sense why I haven't leaned in that direction.
Needles are not everybody's thing. That's one. Two, like it's super expensive.
Yeah.
Three, you really have to keep up with it. There are proven benefits of getting NAD plus IV drips. It started actually, interestingly, I don't know if you know this, but it started with rehab clinics for addictions. So it actually has a lot of benefits. That is the origin and root of these IV NAD plus drips, like from 20, 30 years ago. Even.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
It's very interesting. So, as Intuisse, we had a longevity summit earlier this year in New York. And at that summit, we had different scientists there, as well as longevity experts, etc., functional medicine experts. And they talked about intra and extracellular NAD+. And the difference with our formulation is that the liposome allows the molecule, which is large, inherently unstable, to fuse with the cell wall and deposit the NAD plus directly into the cell.
Okay.
And that's what's so unique about our product, but also interestingly is why we get these results like the Laminin, because it actually boosts the intracellular NAD plus and allows the NAD plus then to do its little job.
It happens as quickly as in 10 days or?
So what we did is these are ex vivo, right? So we did ex vivo, and then we saw that with the infrared spectroscopy and with dosage studies. So interestingly, we were like, okay, we have this great product, but like how much of it do I put into a bottle now? So we
Yes.
did this dosage study, and we're like, okay, well, I was like, oh, okay, that was another one of those like aha moments, like, oh, I guess that would be the next step. I didn't even think about it, and like our formulator, who by the way is amazing, has 20 years experience from L'Oreal, like has been doing this her whole career. She's like, okay, well, how much am I putting in here now? When I talked to the lab, and so at 5%, we found that it stimulates those biomarkers, so collagen, elastin, and laminin to those levels. But it was like ex vivo in a petri dish, and we saw that after 10 years, you had an increase in those biomarkers of that percentage. And what we did is we wanted to benchmark that to
Hmm.
something that made sense for us, right? So we benchmarked it to retinoic acid so that we could then say to consumers, oh, by the way, this percentage, it is as effective as retinoic acid without any of the negative side effects, hypersensitivity of the skin, breakouts, etc.
I guess before we get into being earlier in the space and having to educate your consumer, how long did it take between product development and so there's a research, the development, and then going out into the market? Because I think that's when you and I had connected.
So this is kind of crazy. We were really, really early in the process. So we started in 2019,
Okay. Wow.
early
Wow.
2019, with the liposomal formulation. And it has taken us now, we launched in 2023, 4 years of research beforehand, which for a skincare startup is quite unique, I think, because
Yeah.
we go way beyond, I talked about this earlier, we go way beyond just clinical trials. Everyone asks you, do you have clinical trials? I'm like, of course. And I have 5 other, other experiments that we've done. When we launched, however, the NAD plus market was, I would say, early in
Mhm.
its, still very much in its infancy. It has since exploded. The interesting thing that you mentioned was about education. There is still a ton of education to do around NAD plus. It is sort of like there's a couple of buzzwords out there, but if you like exosomes, NAD plus,
Yeah.
peptides, if you
Yeah.
ask any lay person what any one of those 3 things are, they're like, I don't know, but I think it's good for me. So we still have a lot of education to do. I think the education, particularly for us as an NAD plus based company,
Yeah.
is around the depletion of NAD plus with age. It decreases by about 50%, your 20s to middle age. So it really does decline.
Wow.
The function of NAD plus. So really what I always think about it as is like my iPhone battery gets not as efficient anymore after 3 years.
Mhm.
I'm not an early adopter, even though I just got my new one, but I'm not an early adopter. So like I know that, like it takes longer to charge, like that kind of thing. So understanding that your cells, to me, it makes a lot of sense that you need NAD plus for your cells to continue to be as efficient and quick at performing their functions as they were in their 20s. That is the core and the basis of longevity. So education around that, it's intracellular. This is what it does. And by the way, provenance is important.
Mm.
And that's a big topic, but nobody really talks about that in the supplement IV space. And
Yeah.
that makes me super nervous. So in the longevity space, everyone's talking about this stuff. But like,
Yes.
where exactly is the stuff that's in the bag that's going into my veins coming from?
Mm.
So we
Hmm.
spent a lot of time really researching where is the NAD plus coming from. Our NAD plus is made by a pharmaceutical supplier, so it's pharma grade in Germany, not like in,
Hmm.
somewhere
Yes.
random, and
Right.
it is made to order. When I make liposomal formulation, I order the NAD plus, it gets fabricated for me. It gets then sent to the liposome supplier who's in Switzerland. They make it. They're also a pharmaceutical supplier. They, typically to big pharma, they make it and then it gets sent to the lab. And it's all cold chain, produced, delivered, etc. So like it is at optimal efficacy. That's so important, but nobody talks about that.
That's right. That's right. From a wanting results fast point of view from the consumer,
Yeah.
how long does it take to start to see results? How long does it last if one were to go on and off the product? Because I hear about this from a retention stickiness perspective.
Well, there's two parts to this. So I formulated this for the immediate wow and the long-term health effects, right? So we also packed other clean ingredients into this. Each formulation, we made sure that each formulation has a specific, addresses specific skincare concern. So if it's hydration or microcirculation or even this skin tone, like every single product has a purpose. That was one. Two, I made sure that you on top have other clean ingredients, like I said, like hyaluronics or peptides or whatever, that give you an immediate wow, that are really these topical ingredients with proven clinical efficacy. But when you said, how long do I need to keep using it? I'll say the same way, like, how long do you need to keep like taking a probiotic
Sure.
for your
Yeah.
gut health? Forever.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the answer.
That makes sense because one of my questions when we're taking supplements for collagen has always been we don't know where it's actually going to land and where it's actually going to carry to.
So this is an interesting. The way to think about this is absorption and percentage of absorption. So of course you can take NAD plus supplements.
Yeah.
Many, again, this is an education piece for consumers. Many of the NAD plus supplements actually do not have NAD plus in them. They are, if you read the fine print, they're NAD plus boosting. And they
Ah,
have precursors in them that
yeah.
in the metabolic process, like eventually you're going to get NAD plus. But so like if you think about it, if it's got NR, for example, or NMN, those are the precursors, right? So you take them, and oftentimes these supplements will have a complex of those precursors. So
Yeah.
again, it's like an NAD plus complex rather than NAD plus
Mm,
itself. So
okay.
you take it in, and let's say you take, I don't know, 100 milligrams, right? So of that, some of it will get destroyed potentially by your stomach acid, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say out of the 100, like I'm making it totally up. So this is not a,
Sure.
just like,
It's
this
not a
is
formula.
illustrative. But like, let's say 20% gets absorbed.
Yeah.
Okay. So of that 20%, then what percentage gets turned into NAD plus? That is the question. So, and then is it extracellular or is it intracellular? That
Yeah.
is the other question.
Yes.
Versus with me, I know because we've done side by side studies of the liposomal NAD plus and NAD plus alone, so pure of each, that the liposomal is more effective in extending cell lifespan than the NAD plus alone. So
Okay.
it's getting in there and it's effective.
Got it. It's something that I'm thinking about when I'm choosing supplements, when I'm choosing products for my skin. And it's so clear the way you broke it down. So let's talk about maybe we can shift gears a little bit and let's talk about your core customer and how that has shifted being early in the space. So there are two things that I think will be interesting to dive into is how did you first start to get it out there and to start to build the brand and build that customer trust? Right. I always say that when you're innovative, you're having to explain both the new solution to the customer and build brand at the same time. And personally, I always felt that was one of the hardest things to do. There's value in being early in the space, and you're doing a lot more education when it comes to health, longevity, functional. So tell us a little bit more about how you're able to start to get the word out there and build trust with your initial customers. And then I want to talk about how that core customer may have even shifted over time.
That's a super interesting question, actually. And I think one of the challenges is it's a particular challenge in this industry.
Okay.
And the reason is that what I try to do with this brand is to bring to the customer a very honest product, right? So again, I've said I didn't use precursors. I went the tough route. I did the NAD plus. I didn't just do clinical trials. I did all this. I was super honest also about our cold chain produced and the imperative of refrigeration to keep it at its maximum efficacy, right? So at room temperature, I use it at room temperature in my bathroom, but at room temperature, the product has a shelf life at about 2 to 4 months. And then thereafter, it starts to degrade. So you really want to keep it refrigerated. Hence, we have refills, etc. But all this is changing customer behavior. So not only education around the the molecule itself, but education around how to care for your products.
Mhm.
And that also is just starting, like beauty fridges in bathrooms, etc. That is all just starting. So really, I was like way early, not
Mhm.
only on in terms of like how you care for your skincare, but also the molecule itself in an industry. And this is where I get back to, I think it's particularly difficult in this industry where, clean is prized, but is also prized by a far too small of a segment of the population or the consumer population than I think it should be. And it's also been split from science and clean. So in other words, I still feel like there's a little bit, especially in my generation, there's a little bit of this like, I don't care if it's bad for me as long as I look good.
I can get
As long as
that.
it works. I don't
Yes.
care as long as
Yes.
it works. And then there's this like clean is like crunchy granola, like I don't know, I'm like and that doesn't make any sense. So what I've tried to do is really create what I call a modern skincare brand. Like combines, long-term health for your and super science. Like this is cutting edge. This is as like far as we've gotten in terms of understanding cellular health. But also is like you're not putting toxic stuff on your face. But
That's
it's super hard to get those two together. But I think that is the future. Like really effective things will also not be bad for you.
yes.
And but I think this particular industry, like changing customer behaviors and also getting people to do like understand the science, change their behaviors in an industry where everyone's like, I don't care as long as it makes me look good.
How long is your average customer sticking around once they
Crazy.
experience?
So
Okay.
we have stickiness that is really, really good. All I need to do is to get into customers' hands. Like over 40% of our customers come back. And
Mm,
when they
wow.
do, their basket size is higher than with their first purchase.
Yeah.
And we have a subscription model as well. And the stickiness of those subscriptions is extremely high, as
Okay.
well as the adoption of those subscriptions. To
Yeah.
me, it's really about getting it into people's hands.
And so, how has you, the team, been navigating that? Building that awareness, developing that education, and then actually having them say, yes, I'm going to take a chance, I'm going to take a risk and give this a try because it is still a crowded market. It is an investment because you're a premium brand. And so,
It is definitely tough. Back to your point about, being an innovator, but also brand building. I think we started this journey very much in terms of just we started D2C communicating via our website. And then we also went Instagram. Like that's basically, those were our two handles. We also had some retail.
okay.
So particularly in the UK, because I'm based in the UK. We are at John Bell and Croydon.
Hmm,
They're a fantastic place to discover new
okay.
brands. I have to say it's been a bumpy ride. We kind
Okay.
of went through different phases where it was super effective for us in terms of getting credibility. So I think that's a very hard journey. It's also a very expensive journey for a small brand. Everyone seems to go there. Definitely 2 years ago, and the marketing landscape is changing dramatically, especially now with like AI, and we can get into a whole different discussion around that as
Absolutely.
well. But it was 2 years ago when we launched, it was definitely all about like you need 100 pieces of content a month, you
Yeah.
need to do the testing, creative testing, you need to get doing 100 pieces of creative content a month for a small startup with 5 products is super hard.
Yeah.
and expensive. What was most interesting to us, actually, because already the landscape was changing 2 years ago, is that, your big influencer doesn't really do anything for you. So, 80/20 rule, like, it was even more extreme. It's like 5% of my spend, drove 90% of my revenue in Meta, and the 5% was actually on micro influencers that really came across as genuine, had a story, were aspirational but attainable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think like all of this is with even though I was on Instagram, like an undertone of what TikTok has done
Mm,
for
mm.
brands is
Yeah.
that you have real people telling their stories at every age. And
Yeah.
so in terms of a consumer, what we found too is that like when we did old school focus groups, as one does before you launch a brand, we actually found that our core consumer was like late 30s, mid 40s. Why? Because they have the income,
Yeah.
they
They
start to see
need.
some aging
Yeah.
and think they can still beat it. That's what I
Right.
say.
That's right.
So versus like the mid 40s or like 50s were like spent all their money on kids' college. It's like, and I'm now going to age gracefully. And I like, it's kind of funny. It was very old school thing, like feedback that we got. The difference today is really about understanding your cellular health and seeing the age groups and about prevention. So you have seen then also in these last 2 years, I think, or even probably a bit longer, like, but I'm just relating it to my launch timeframe. You've seen now young women in their 20s getting Botox, etc. So the way I think about this is that is quite like heavy-handed from a prevention perspective when you're 23, 24, 25.
That's right.
From the age of 25, your NAD plus levels start to decline. This is a very natural option for
Mm.
consumers to do prevention in a healthy, natural way, you know?
Got it.
So
Okay.
I think this is like we've had a lot of success actually with late 20s, early 30s.
Oh,
And we have a lot of success with late 30s, 40s, and 50s who say, this is not there's a difference between erasing a wrinkle
yeah.
and being like 65 and having not one wrinkle and
Hmm.
having the best skin that you could possibly have. I
Yes.
am giving you combination of genetics, lifestyle, sleep, hydration, and this will give you the best skin that you can possibly have
Mm.
as you Destiny, as me Isabel, etc.
That's such a good ad angle. So good. The best skin you'll ever have. And yes, wow. I kind of going back to your point around, just testing a bunch of creative. It's interesting that you raised that because something that we're seeing is so Meta has had platform updates. And so there is, what we're finding is that there is a need to test a different range of creatives, but it's more about getting specific messaging to the different, we can't even say personas anymore. I feel like it doesn't even accurately capture it, but more about the specific message to what your person or that audience group, that community is dealing with, right? And so whether you're speaking to the menopause, the perimenopause, the longevity, it's very different messaging and very different creative angles, and kind of what you're talking about here, it just makes so much sense when you're talking to the person who's thinking about prevention versus the person who thinks that, to your point, they can still prevent some aging. I mean, that's just very different messaging and very different hook
Very.
that you will pull them in with.
And to your point, if you want Meta to, the algorithm to
Yeah.
serve your messages up to the right people, but you have different cohorts, you need to create different ads that go to those people. Um, so I think that is a challenge and understanding like who those cohorts are and how do you really speak to them. I haven't personally seen any brands who've done that extremely well because, by the way, this is kind of fun and interesting, but Lisa is my head of marketing. Little shout out to Lisa. She's amazing. But she is 23, right? So we get served up the same brands, but basically the same messages. Like, I don't see anybody who's done this particularly well. So it's not like I say to her, listen, I've got this brand, I got this message, and what did you get? But we're still getting the same.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So I think maybe just to build on that, you and I were talking before we went live about how you've been speaking even more so to the longevity customer. So tell us a little bit more about that and how that's even potentially informing different product lines that's emerging.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. This has been a journey for us because I would say probably partly because of also where I come from in terms of my background, in terms of my career, etc. I would probably say people would say, "Oh, do you want to be at Sephora? It's the Holy Grail, right?" Kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I actually am finding that you've got that, but I think that's more of a place of discovery for color cosmetics. You now have, in the same motion as like my NAD plus has taken off, you also have a large preponderance growth in the aesthetic clinic / longevity clinic / med spa space, especially in the United States. So med spas traditionally have been, very well known in Asia as well as, but particularly in Europe. Right? So think Swiss med spa, you go to your cure. I mean, even that's like my grandparents did that, like you go to a cure, you go to think Lanzerhof, think Meyer Clinic, like that type of experience, right? That is what today everyone's discovering as a med spa. But those have been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
Now you take the US market. The US market is, from my experience, there are pockets in Asia as well, but from my experience in Europe and the US is much far ahead in this longevity game.
Yeah.
And so now you've got ahead in the longevity game, much more interested in NAD plus than my European customer because of that movement. And now the advent of med spas to the US. And that makes it a much more interesting channel for me than, for example, an Ulta or a Sephora, because it's a marriage of those two.
Yeah.
So the people that are interested in going to med spas are people who've heard of NAD plus, are interested in cold plunges, infrared saunas, this and that. They are in the longevity game. They are being served off content that maybe talk about IV drips, and then they see my NAD plus and skincare, and they're like, "Oh, this is an interesting thing."
Yes.
Also, the people that work at the med spa are conversant in NAD plus and in longevity, and can talk about where I have to do less heavy lifting on the training than I would have to do if I was going to a traditional retail.
That makes sense.
So in terms of where I am and where NAD plus is in terms of its life cycle, it is a much better fit for me. And it's different. And that's why I make this point around, the advent of med spas. It's different from, your typical spa that used to get 50% of their revenue is massages and 50%, 25% is facials, and I don't know, 10% is waxing and whatever, your traditional spa. Because I was sort of reticent to go into that channel 2 years ago because I'm like, nobody buys that stuff. At the end of their facial, they give you a list of stuff. You're kind of annoyed because you've just had a relaxing moment, and now they're shoving retail down your throat. And you always same spa I would go to, I was I'm pretty sure there's dust collecting on the retail section. No one's touching the stuff. You know what I mean?
You just drop $500, or you're going to drop another 1,000.
No, you're no. So exactly. So I was a little bit reticent about that channel because I thought, and then, there's obviously the dermatologist channel as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's super fragmented, right? So it's like quite difficult. It's getting better because there are now online platforms that dermatologists can be on, and they can actually like create a cart for you, email it to you, and then you check out. There are those models that are coming, but I'm finding that the med spas where I can sit alongside an IV drip and alongside other innovative both practices and ingredients is the best
Yes.
place for me to be.
Got it. And so have you been rolling this out and testing in certain micro markets? I'm also curious, like your current customer base, what's a breakdown between US and Europe?
Oh, it's
On
85% US.
got it. Okay.
And the US consumer is further along on the longevity cycle. It's a cultural thing in terms of like disposable income. What percentage of my disposable income do I allocate to this? And
Yes.
so, in terms of like allocation of spend in my pie of like what that's bigger
Mm,
here than it
okay.
is in Europe. And the third thing is there is more openness to try,
Got it. That makes sense. That makes total
especially online, a brand that
hmm
they've seen online. Um, and two factors contribute to that. One is COVID, and the second is return policies.
It's
So
true.
the US, remember, like I was shocked by this. Like back, 20 years ago when I worked at Estee Lauder, I was like, what do you mean I like somebody can buy an eyeshadow and return it?
Yeah.
To
It's true.
Bloomingdale's? Like that is insane. But
So
that is America, right? And so that creates a consumer that is much more open to innovation, small brands trying new things.
So I guess tell me a little bit more. I'm very curious about the testing this out in certain markets when it comes to med spas. Here in Austin, we have Restore Wellness. That's where I also go to experiment with different therapies. But yes, tell me a little bit more about how this is unfolding and how this is informing like what's next, right?
So I can tell you part of the story because we have two really exciting things happening, but I can't announce them yet.
Of course.
In terms of like our rollouts and where we will be bringing our NAD plus therapies to. But what I will tell you is, and maybe I'll like send you a little text message when we've rolled them out, and then you'll know. But what we are doing as well is really focusing on both in procedure and post procedure treatments within med spas. So we have our existing line of products that has 5% NAD plus, like I said. It's been benchmarked to retinoic acid, so it really should give you the same collagen, elastin, and laminin benefits as retinol without all that negative side effects. But we're also developing a pro line which has a much higher concentration of NAD plus, and that is really for microneedling
Mm,
and for post laser, for
mm,
example,
yeah.
recovery. But really, what we wanted to do is to be able to cater both to our B2B corporate partners as well as to our consumers and really offer a differentiated proposition to the consumer in terms of, like I said, pure NAD plus,
Well,
liposomal, extra science behind it, but super clean. That's what I'm giving you as a consumer. But then also on the professional side, really giving them a way to, again, proven, provenance, etc., high quality, but really allowing you to offer a microneedling treatment
yes.
that is differentiated and is allowing this NAD plus to go even further into the skin.
Wow. I'm sold. I'm
And
sold.
also helping with recovery, right? Like the lasers and stuff. Like, I have super sensitive skin.
Yes.
So, getting a laser treatment, I actually haven't tried them because I'm nervous about it, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm like super
Yes.
fair. Having this professional product that I can take home that
Yeah.
will ameliorate the healing, allow me to get back to work more quickly. Skin
Yeah.
is a living organism, and you have to, like, you can't just pile 1,000 things onto it.
Yes. And, just to kind of expand on that, but there are now studies and conversations around your microbiome, like your skin's microbiome, right? And so, we've been, at least in the US, we've been having attention on gut health for the last 5 to 10 years. And now the skin's microbiome is coming into attention. So it's, I couldn't agree more. I think that the last point that would be really interesting, as we wrap up this conversation, and Isabel, I feel like I could talk to you and for another hour, right? And like we can unpack even more, is around, you have a premium brand. And, we were also talking about discovery on Amazon. So I'm curious in terms of the company's positioning and thinking around discounting, managing the premium brand equity, and then tying that with discovery on Amazon, because I hear tensions around brand and search and, how do we think about preserving this while still also driving sales with your core customers?
I'm going to say that I think Amazon's a great tool because I have had a journey on this as well, obviously, because, I come from a world where, back in the day we're like, oh, we would never be on Amazon.
Right.
There's a couple ways to think about this. One is discovery. So this is, standard marketing. You have to see something 6 or 7 times before you make a purchase. So the more places I can be, the better. If they saw me on Amazon, they saw me on my own site, they saw me in an email, they saw me on Instagram, they go into the med spa, they might buy me.
Sure.
So not being on Amazon is one less place that they will have experienced Intuisse.
That's right.
The second thing is, I think it's important for marketers, business owners, CEOs, whatever, to think about your product mix.
Yeah.
So I have higher end products and lower end products. I have everything from $20 to several hundreds of dollars, right? Your product mix can be different on different
channels. Yeah.
Right. So I may sell more of my lower priced on Amazon than I do on my website or through my Instagram shop. That is another thing. And that is okay.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
The third thing is, you can have people ask the question, for example, like, I don't want to have it on Amazon because then they're not going to go to my website.
Sure.
But I have only one thing to say. No one is at your website every day.
That's
Everyone's at Amazon every day.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, when I'm working on my laptop, as we all do, day and night, and I'm bored,
yes,
I like to reward myself with a little Amazon purchase.
Yes, that's right.
So
that's
I'm like, oh, maybe I need some new, clean, like what new clean toothpaste are there? Like something, anything. And I had spent $20 on a toothpaste, which is ridiculous, but
I get that.
Oh, and it's so easy because it's almost free because it's just fine and it just comes the next day and credit card's already in there. So those barriers to checkout are much lower. The fourth thing is on Amazon, it is much cheaper and the ROAS is much higher than it is on Instagram.
Yes, that's right.
So like my Google ads, my Amazon ads, like why wouldn't I do them? Right? Yeah. Like they actually are always in the positive. So there are not that many channels where I can just put in a few marketing dollars and it always is positive investment.
I think I know. I'm curious, what is the average price point or cart value of your hero product?
So it's about $200, $250.
Yeah, got it.
But that is because our hero product is our face serum. It is our top seller. It is designed to go with the rest of your skincare. Like I said, my serums actually are the best sellers on my website. So actually Amazon evens out my product mix.
Yes. Okay. I love that. Again, I could keep going on and pick your brain and talk about the discoveries and the innovation. And this has been so great, Isabel, like really.
Thank you so much. So nice to catch up.
Yes, likewise. Thank you for being on. And I can't wait to share this with our community.
Perfect.